I was 73 years old and flat on my back in a hospital bed that smelled like bleach and bad decisions when I ER'd my son and his wife steal my bank. Road. The morphine was doing its job, floating me somewhere between sleep and awake, the ceiling tiles swimming in slow circles above my head. I'd been in this room for 6 days now, recovering from a hip replacement that had gone sideways when an infection set in. The doctors said I'd be fine. But fine is a relative word when you're an old man with a SCAR running down your leg in a future that looks shorter than it used to. Gladys, the night nurse, had just come in to check my vitals. She was a big-boned woman in her 50s with hair the color of steel wool and hands that were surprisingly gentle for their size. She smelled like wintergreen and coffee, and she didn't talk much, which I appreciated. I'd spent 42 years driving a city bus through the South Side, listening to people's problems and their phone calls and their whispered arguments. I'd had my fill of conversation. "You doing okay, Frank?" she asked, wrapping the blood pressure cuff around my arm. "Fine as frog hair," I said, which was my standard answer for everything. She smiled and wrote something on her clipboard. "Road, your son called. Said he and his wife would be by around 8. I nodded. Derek always called. He was good about that. He was good about a lot of things, or at least he'd Ned to act like he was. I'd raised him alone after his mother ran off with a forklift operator from the distribution center back in '89. She'd sent a post-gay from Florida 3 months later, a picture of a beach with a palm tree, and that was the last I ever ER'd from her. Derek was 12 years old, a skinny kid with too much hair and not enough confidence. I did my best. I worked double shifts. I canned dinners that were heavy on canned vegetables, and I taught him how to shave and how to change a tire and how to stand up for himself. I thought I'd done a decent job. But somewhere along the line, something shifted. Derek got my ride to Ma Rolene, a real estate agent with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and he sta root ca ring about things I'd never read about. Money. Status. The right car, the right neighborhood, the right vacation destinations. He'd become a salesman for a commercial roofing company, always in a cheap suit that was too tight across the shoulders, always checking his phone for emails that couldn't wait. I didn't recognize him sometimes. But he was still my son. I loved him the way you love a crooked picture on the wall. You don't want to straighten it because it's been that way so long it feels like part of the room. They showed up at 8:15. Which was late enough to be rude but early enough to pretend they weren't. Derek came in first, carrying a bag of oranges from the grocery store. He set them on my nightstand and kissed my forehead, a dry peck that left no warranty. "Hey, Dad. You look rested." I didn't look rested. I looked like a bag of old laundry propped up against a pillow. But I smiled anyway. "Feeling better," I said. "They say the infection's clearing up. Might be out of here in a week or 2. "That's great," he said, but his eyes were already drifting toward the window. He was a man who could never quite be still. His hands kept moving, patting his pockets, adjusting his tie. Ma Rolene came in behind him, her heels clicking on the linoleum like a woodpecker with a grudge. She was wearing a cream-colored blazer and carrying her phone like it was a scepter. She gave me a smile that was quick and practiced, the kind of smile you give a stranger in an elevator. "Frank, you look wonderful for a man who's been through surgery," she said. "Really? The color's coming back to your cheeks." "Must be the hospital food," I said. "All that jello and pudding." She laughed, a high, tinkly sound that didn't match her eyes. Those eyes were always moving, always counting, always measuring. She'd been a real estate agent for 15 years, and she'd Ned to look at everything in terms of SQA footage and resale value. When she looked at me, I knew she saw a house that was about to go on the market. She sat down in the visitor's chair and pulled out her phone, scrolling through something. Zillow, probably. She was always looking at houses, even when she was supposed to be visiting her father-in-law in the hospital. I didn't mind. I'd never expected her to love me. I'd just expected her to be decent. And she was, mostly. She remembered my birthday. She brought flowers at Christmas. She called me Frank instead of Dad, which I preferred anyway. But there was always something behind her eyes. A calculation. A weighing. Derek sat on the edge of my bed, which made the whole thing tilt slightly. So, Dad, we need to talk about something. Practical stuff. I raised an eyebrow. Practical. Your bills. Your accounts. We want to make sure everything's taken care of while you're in here. He was speaking too fast, the way he always did when he was nervous. The property tax is due next month, and there are the utility bills and the insurance premiums. We just want to be able to handle things for you. I looked at him. My son. The boy who'd cried on my shoulder when his first dog died. The boy who'd built a model airplane with me that took 6 weeks and ended up looking more like a duck than a plane. I could still see that boy in the man sitting next to me, but he was buried under layers of anxiety and ambition. I've got autopay set up for most of it, I said. I set that up years ago. I know, but sometimes things fall through the cracks. And we don't want you to worry about anything. He paused, wiping his palms on his pants. We just need your pins. For your debit road. So we can access the accounts if we need to. Marlene looked up from her phone. It's just a precaution, Frank. In case there's an emergency. I looked at them. Both of them. Derek's forehead was shining with a thin layer of sweat. Marlene's smile was frozen in place, as if she'd practiced it in the mirror that morning. Something wasn't right. Something was off. But I was tired, and the morphine was pulling at the edges of my mind, and I didn't have the energy to fight. I'll think about it, I said. Let me get some rest. Derek patted my hand. Of course, Dad. We just want to help. They sat for another 10 minutes, making small talk about the weather and the nurses and the quality of the hospital coffee. Then Derek stood up and said they had to get going. They had an EARLY meeting the next day. Marlene kissed my cheek, leaving a faint trace of lipstick. Her lips were cold. Get some sleep, Frank, she said. We'll see you soon. The door clicked shut behind them. I closed my eyes and let the morphine take me. The ceiling tiles sta root swimming again, and I sank into that the RK well where nothing hurt and nothing mattered. But I didn't go all the way down. Some part of me stayed just below the surface, floating, listening. That's when I ER'd them. They were still standing in the hallway outside my door. I could hear Marlene's voice first, sharp and impatient. That was a waste of time. He's not going to give us the pins. He's too stubborn. Give him a minute, Derek said. He's old. He's probably already forgotten we asked. Then we take the CA road. He keeps it in his shaving kit. I saw him put it there yesterday. We take the CARD, we figure out the pin, and we get what we need. Silence. Then Derek's voice, quieter this time. What if he wakes up? What if he catches us? He's drugged out of his mind, Derek. He's not going to wake up. And even if he does, so what? We're his family. We're helping him. We're taking care of his affairs. More silence. Then footsteps. The door opened again. I kept my eyes closed, let my mouth drop open slightly, let my breathing become slow and deep. I heard Derek's footsteps cross the room. I felt his hand on the zipper of my toiletry bag. He was trembling. I could tell from the way his fingers fumbled with the zipper, the soft clink of metal against metal. Got it, he whispered. Let's go. But they didn't go. I heard Marlene hiss, we need the pin. We need it now. It's probably his birthday, Derek whispered. Or Mom's. Try Mom's. It's not, I said, but my lips didn't move. It wasn't. My birthday was September 14th. My ex-wife's birthday was March 22nd. But the pin I used wasn't any of those. Wake him up, Marlene said, her voice urgent. Just ask him. He'll tell you. He's your father. Derek leaned closer. I felt his breath on my EAR, smelled his cologne, the cheap sandalwood scent he'd been wearing since high school. Dad. Dad, can you hear me? I need your PIN. For the taxes. Remember, I didn't answer. But I did something else. I let my head loll to the side and I muttered, just loud enough for them to hear, the way a dreaming man mutters his secrets to the pillow. 1947. I said it slowly, reefily, like I was telling the night sky my deepest secret. And then I smiled. Not a big smile. Just the faintest curl of my lip against the pillowcase. They didn't see it. They were too busy fumbling with their phone, typing the numbers, whispering in triumph. Got it, Derek breathed. Let's get out of here. Their footsteps retreated. The door clicked shut. I opened my eyes and read at the ceiling. The smile stayed. Because I knew something they didn't. The card they'd taken wasn't my real debit road. It was the fake one I'd kept in my shading kit for YRS, a decoy I'd made up when I root feeling forgetful and a little paranoid. The real one, the one with the $40,000 RS of my life savings, was taped to the back of the apple tree in my backyard, in a Ziploc bag I'd buried under a loose piece of bark. I'd put it there the week before the surgery, just in case. Just in case the hospital got robbed. Just in case someone stole my wallet. I'd never expected my own son to be the thief. The fake card had a zero balance and a daily withdrawal limit of $1. It was the kind of card you use to pay for parking meters, not to fund real estate deals. I'd been using it for YRS, a little insurance policy against the world. I reached under my pillow and pulled out my real wallet. Inside was the card I'd tucked away before they arrived. I'd switched them that morning, when Gladys helped me get dressed. I don't know why. Maybe I just had a feeling. Maybe I'd been reading people for too long not to read my own son. The morphine was wearing off now. The ceiling tiles stopped swimming. My hip root to ache. But I didn't I just lay there in the dark, listening to the hum of the hospital machines, and smiled. I had already transferred the $40,000 to a new account at a credit union in the next county. An account they didn't know about. An account that was just mine. And now I had the perfect way to teach Derek a lesson he'd never forget. Gladys came in an hour later to check my vitals. She flipped on the little light above my bed and frowned at my face. You look like the cat that ate the canary, Frank. What's going on? I winked at her. Just had a good dream, Gladys. A real good dream. She shook her head and wrote something on her clipboard. Road well, whatever it was, I hope it lasts. You've got a long road ahead of you. I watched her leave, the door swinging softly behind her. Then I closed my eyes and settled back into the pillows. Tomorrow, I'd call my friend Sal. Sal owned a diner called the Rusty Spoon, 3 blocks from my house. He was 81, a widower, and the only man I trusted with a secret. I'd ask him to go to my house, to get the real card, to bring it to me. And then I'd decide what to do next. I wasn't going to press charges. I wasn't going to humiliate them in front of the family. I was going to give them a choice. A chance to come clean, to apologize, to make things right. Derek was my son. I loved him. I loved him despite everything. But love didn't mean you let people walk all over you. Love didn't mean you turned a blind eye to the truth. I'd spent 73 years learning that lesson. It was time my son learned it too. I fell asleep with that smile still on my face, the one that knew all the secrets, the one that knew the game was just beginning. The morning light came through the hospital blinds like a spotlight, and I was already awake. I'd slept better than I had in weeks, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that comes when you know something the other guy doesn't. My hip was aching, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I had a plan. First things first. I needed Sal. Sal owned the Rusty Spoon, a diner that had been in the same spot since 1972. He'd bought it with his wife, Rose, and when she passed in '98, he'd kept it running like a memorial. Grease-stained menus, cracked vinyl booths, coffee that could strip paint. It was the kind of place where the regular RS didn't need to order because Sal already knew what they wanted. For me, it was a bacon sandwich, extra crisp, and a cup of black coffee. The same thing I'd been eating for 30 years. I called him from the hospital phone, the one attached to the wall by my bed. It took 3 rings before he picked up, his voice a gravelly rumble that sounded like he'd been smoking since birth. Rusty spoon, Sal speaking. Sal, it's Frank. I need a favor. Frankie. You're supposed to be laid up. Did you break out? Do I need to hide you in the back room? I laughed. Sal always laughed at his own jokes, and that was fine with me. I'm still here. But I need you to go to my house. There's a key under the 3rd porch boa RD, the one that's loose. Go to the back yard, the apple tree with the split trunk. On the south side, there's a piece of bark that's loose. Underneath, there's a Ziploc bag with a card and a piece of paper. Bring it to me. And don't tell anyone. Silence on his end. Then a low whistle. Frank, you sound like you're in a spy movie. What's going on? I told him. I told him everything. The visit. The whispering. The CA road. The fake pin. The smile in the dark. I told him about the decoy CARD with its 0 balance and the real CARD with the $40,000 RS taped to a tree. Sal listened without interrupting, which was RA for him. He was a talker, a storyteller, a man who could turn a trip to the grocery store into a 3-act play. But when I finished, he was quiet. Your own son, he said finally. Your own blood. He's not a bad kid, Sal. He's just weak. And he's my ride to a woman who's never had to earn a dime the hard way. I've met her. She's got teeth like a weasel. I don't trust anyone with teeth like that. She's not the one who matters. Derek is. And I'm going to give him a chance to make it right. Sal grunted. You're a better man than me. If it was my son, I'd beat him with a tire iron. That's why I'm the father and you're the uncle, I said. Now will you do it? Be there in an hour. I'm closing the diner EARLY. Rose would understand. I hung up and lay back in bed, waiting. The morning passed slowly. A nurse came in to check my temperature and change the dressing on my hip. She was young, rely out of school, with a nervous habit of clicking her pen. I asked her about her day, her classes, her plans. She told me she was saving up for a trip to Europe. I told her I'd been to Europe once, in 1965, and the highlight was a beer in Munich that tasted like bread. She laughed and said I was sweet. I told her sweet was just another word for old. Sal showed up at 10:30, carrying a brown paper bag from the diner. He walked into my room like he owned the place, his boots scuffing on the linoleum, his stained apron still tied around his waist. He set the bag on my nightstand and pulled out a bacon sandwich and a thermos of coffee. Eat, he said. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in weeks. I unwrapped the sandwich and took a bite. The bacon was perfect, crisp but not burned, just the way I liked it. Sal knew how to CK. It was the only thing he was good at, besides being a friend. Did you get it? I asked. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out the Ziploc bag. Inside was my real debit card and the piece of paper with the account number for the credit union. I took it and tucked it under my pillow. Thanks, Sal. I owe you one. You owe me about 100, he said, sitting in the visitor's chair. Now what's the plan? You going to call the cops? I shook my head. No. No cops. I'm going to give them a chance to come clean. Tonight. I'm going to call them and say I need to see them, and when they get here, I'm going to lay it all out. Sal raised an eyebrow. You're going to humiliate them. I'm going to teach them a lesson. There's a difference. He leaned back in the chair, folding his arms across his chest. Frank, you're a mean old basta RD, and I mean that as the highest compliment. Thanks, Sal. I'll see you tomorrow. He left, and I finished my sandwich in peace. Then I called Derek. He answered on the second ring, his voice bright and anxious. Dad. How are you feeling? We were going to come by tonight. I'm feeling better, I cut him off. And I need you to come by anyway. Both of you. I need to talk to you about something important. A pause. Sure, Dad. Of course. What time? 6 o'clock. And Derek, come alone. Leave Raylene at home. There are some things I want to say to you first. Another pause. Longer this time. I don't think that's a good idea. She's my wife. We're a team. Then bring her, I said. But I'm telling you, son, there are things you need to hear that she won't want to hear. I'll leave it up to you. I hung up before he could argue. I knew he'd bring her. That was the kind of man Derek was. He never made a decision without consulting her first, even when it was a decision about his own father. I didn't mind. I'd expected it. The afternoon dragged on. I watched the clock on the wall, its hands ticking away the minutes like they were counting down to something important. I thought about all the hours I'd spent raising Derek. The nights I'd come home from a double shift, exhausted and sore, and still helped him with his homework. The weekends I'd taken him to the lake, teaching him how to cast a line and how to be patient. The day he graduated high school, the pride I felt when he walked across the stage. The day he married Raylene, the smile on his face that I hadn't seen in years. I thought about the good times, and I thought about the bad. The day he'd told me he was moving across town, that he needed to be closer to Raylene's office. The day he'd stopped calling me on Sundays, his voice always busy, always distracted. The day I'd fallen and broken my hip, and he'd shown up at the hospital with a cell phone in his hand and Raylene's name on his lips, I wasn't angry. Anger was for young men, for men who had time to hold grudges. I was something else. Disappointed. He'd broken. The word I kept coming back to was sad. I was sad for my son, for the man he'd become, for the boy he'd forgotten how to be. At 5:30, I asked the nurse to help me get dressed. Not in the hospital gown, but in my own clothes. A pair of slacks, a flannel shirt, the jacket I'd worn every day for the past 10 years. I wanted to feel like myself. I wanted to face them as the man I was, not as the patient they pitted. The nurse helped me into a wheelchair and pushed me down to the hospital's main lobby. I told her I wanted fresh air. She raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She'd learned by now that I was a stubborn old man who did what he pleased. I sat in the lobby, watching the automatic doors slide open and closed, watching the visitors come and go. Families with flowers, husbands with anxious faces, children pulling on their parents' hands. I saw joy and fear and relief and grief, all mixed together in the fluorescent light. I'd seen it all before. I'd seen it on my bus, on the faces of the people I see a ride from one place to another. Life was just a series of rides. Some were smooth, some were bumpy, and some ended before you were ready. At 6 o'clock on the automatic doors slid open and Derek walked in. He was alone. That surprised me. I'd expected Raylene to be right behind him, her heels clicking, her phone buzzing. But he was alone, wearing a denim jacket and a pair of jeans, his hair uncombed. He looked younger. He looked like the boy I'd raised. Dad, he said, walking over. You're out of bed. That's good. I needed to get some air, I said. Let's sit. I pointed to a bench near the window. We sat down, the vinyl creaking under our weight. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Derek turned to me, his eyes red-rimmed. Dad, I know why you called. I know what I did. And I'm sorry. I looked at him. He was already crying, the tears spilling down his cheeks in a way that made him look even younger. I reached over and squeezed his arm. Tell me everything, I said. From the beginning. He took a shaky breath and told me. Raylene had been pressuring him for months. They were in debt, credit card debt, CAR payments, a mortgage they couldn't afford. The real estate flip she'd been planning required a down payment they didn't have, and she'd convinced him that my money was the only way. He'd resisted at first, but she wore him down. She always wore him down. I didn't want to do it, he said, his voice cracking. I knew it was wrong. But she kept telling me it was for us, for our future, that you'd never miss it. And I believed her, because I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe there was an easy way out. I sat there, listening. The lobby buzzed around us, but I tuned it out. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the confession I'd hoped for but hadn't expected. You took the wrong card, I said. The one you took has nothing on it. It's a decoy. I've had it for years. Derek's eyes widened. What? I switched them. The morning you came to visit. I had a feeling. I paused. The real money, $40,000 it's in a safe place. A place you'll never find. And it's staying there until I decide what to do with it. He read at me, his mouth open. Dad, I don't understand. Why didn't you just call the police? Why didn't you confront me? Because you're my son, I said. And I wanted to give you a chance. A chance to tell me the truth, a chance to make things right. That's what fathers do. Derek broke down. He put his head in his hands and wept, ugly and loud and unashamed. I let him. I sat beside him and let him cry, the same way I'd done when he was 12 and his mother had left. I didn't offer words of comfort. I didn't tell him everything was okay. It wasn't. But I was here. That was enough. When he finally calmed down, he looked up at me, his face blotchy and swollen. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, son. I know. And Rolene, I know she's been a bad influence. She's not a bad person, not really. She's just red. We both agree. We're red of failing, red of ending up with nothing. I understand fear, I said. I've been afraid most of my life. But I never stole from anyone to fix it. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I know. I know that. And I want to be better. I want to change. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the boy and the man. I saw the hope and the fear and the shame, all tangled together. And I made a decision. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to go home. You're going to have a talk with Rolene, a real talk, and you're going to tell her what happened. She's going to be angry. She's going to blame me. Let her. You're going to listen to her, and then you're going to tell her that from now on, you make your own decisions. You're going to be the man I raised you to be. He nodded, his eyes still wet. And the money stays where it is. For now. If you prove to me that you've changed, that you're serious about making things right, I'll consider helping you. Not with a handout. With a loan. A real loan, with terms and interest. You'll pay me back, every penny. And if you don't, the money goes to charity. He reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. Thank you, Dad. I won't let you down. I promise. I hope not. Because if you do, I'll be at your door with the security footage from the ATM and a police report. And I won't hesitate. He flinched. Good. He needed to understand that this wasn't a game. We sat there for another hour, talking about old times. He told me about a fishing trip he remembered, a summer day when we'd caught a trout that was so big he couldn't lift it. I told him about the bus route I'd driven, the faces I'd seen, the stories I'd collected. It was the kind of conversation we hadn't had in years. It felt good. It felt right. When he left, I went back to my room and sat in the dark, thinking. I'd given him a chance. That was all I could do. The rest was up to him. And in the morning, I'd call the credit union and make sure the $40,000 was still there. I'd check the security cameras on my house. I'd take every precaution, but for now, I let myself hope. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the hospital window. It was a gentle sound, the kind that made you want to pull the blankets over your head and stay in bed. But I had things to do. I had a plan to set in motion, and I wasn't about to let a little rain slow me down. Gladys came in with my breakfast tray. Eggs, toast, and a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been brewed in a dirty sock. I drank it anyway. You don't survive 73 hours by being picky. You're up EARLY, she said, adjusting the blinds. Couldn't sleep. I slept fine, I said. I've got a busy day ahead. She raised an eyebrow. Busy, Frank? You're in a hospital bed. The only thing you've got busy is your imagination. I smiled. You'd be surprised. She left, shaking her head. I finished my breakfast and called the credit union. The woman who answered was polite but cautious. She asked for my account number and my mother's maiden name and my date of birth and my social security number, and by the time she was done, I felt like I had been interrogated. But she confirmed what I already knew. The $40,000 was still there, untouched. Then I called Sal. He picked up on the first ring. Rusty spoon. It's Frank. I need you to do something for me. Frankie, you're ring me out. I'm an old man. I can't be running errands all day. You're younger than me, I said. And I need you to go to the bank. The one on Maple Street. There's a security camera above the ATM. I need you to ask the manager for a copy of the footage from the night Derek tried to use the CA road. There was a long pause on Sal's end. Frank, that's not a normal request. They're not going to just hand over security footage because you ask nicely. Tell them it's for an investigation. Tell them I'm filing a police report and I need the evidence. They don't have to give you the whole tape. Just a few stills. Derek's face. The timestamp. That's all I need. Sal sighed. You're asking me to lie. I'm asking you to help me protect my family. There's a difference. Another pause. Then, fine. But you owe me. And I'm going to hold you to it. I'll buy you a steak dinner. The best in town. You're on. I hung up and lay back in bed, STA ring at the ceiling. The rain was still falling, a steady rhythm that matched the beat of my heart. I thought about Derek, about the conversation we'd had the night before. I believed him when he said he was sorry. I believed he wanted to change. But wanting to change and actually changing were two different things, and I'd learned the hard way that words were cheap. Actions were what mattered. Sal showed up at noon, soaking wet, CA in a manila envelope. He shook the rain off his jacket and handed it to me. Here. The manager gave me a hard time at first, but I told him you were a war veteran with a heart condition, and he caved. I might have added a few details about your time in Vietnam. I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 still images from the security camera. The first showed Derek standing at the ATM, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. The second showed Marlene standing behind him, her hand on his shoulder, her expression tight with anticipation. The third showed them both turning away from the machine, their faces twisted with confusion and frustration. The timestamp read 10:15 p.m. I studied the pictures for a long moment. Then I put them back in the envelope and set it on my nightstand. Thanks, Sal. This is perfect. Perfect for what you're not going to use them to press charges, or you said you weren't going to do that. I'm not going to press charges, I said. But I'm going to use them. I'm going to call Marlene. I'm going to ask her to come here, alone. And when she gets here, I'm going to show her these pictures. I'm going to tell her what I know. And I'm going to give her a choice. Sal shook his head. You're a dangerous man, Frank. You know that I'm a father, I said. That's the most dangerous thing in the world. He left, and I called Marlene. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and professional. Frank. How are you feeling? Derek told me you had a nice talk yesterday. He seemed really happy. We did have a good talk, I said. But I'd like to talk to you, too. Alone. Can you come by the hospital this afternoon around 3? Pause. I don't know, Frank. I've got a showing at 2, and another at 4. It's a busy day. This will only take a few minutes, I said. I have something I need to show you. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay. I'll be there at 3. But I can't stay long. I understand. I'll see you then. I hung up and waited. The hours crawled by. The rain stopped, and the sun came out, casting long shadows across the hospital room. I ate lunch. I watched a game show on the little TV mounted on the wall. I dozed off for a while, dreaming of nothing in particular. At 3 o'clock on the dot, M.A. Ruine walked in. She was wearing a black pantsuit and high heels, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like she was ready for a BOA-RD meeting, not a conversation with her father-in-law. Frank, she said, her voice neutral. You said you had something to show me. I gestured to the chair beside my bed. Sit down, M.A. Ruine. Please. She sat, crossing her legs and folding her hands in her lap. She was composed, controlled, the picture of someone who had never done anything wrong in her life. I know what happened the other night, I said. I know you and Derek took my CARD from the shaving kit. I know you tried to use it at the ATM. I know the pin you used was wrong. Her face didn't change. Not a flicker. She was good. I'd give her that. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. We didn't take anything. We were just trying to help. I reached for the manila envelope and pulled out the pictures. I laid them on the bed, one by one, so she could see them. Her face, his face, the ATM, the time stamped. I have more than pictures, I said. I have the account records. I have the timestamps. I have everything I need to go to the police and file a report. But I haven't. Because I wanted to give you a chance. She read at the pictures, her face finally cracking. The composure slipped, just for a moment. I saw anger, fear, and something else. Something that looked like regret. What do you want? She asked, her voice tight. Money. You want us to pay you back? We don't have any money, Frank. That's why we did it. I don't want your money, I said. I want you to change. I want you to stop using my son. I want you to stop treating him like a pawn in your little game. She flinched. That's not what I do. I love Derek. He's my husband. You love him when he does what you want, I said. You love him when he brings home a paycheck. You love him when he's useful. But you don't love him for who he is. You don't love him for the man he could be. She didn't answer. She just sat there, staring at the pictures, her hands trembling slightly. I'm going to give you a choice, I said. You can keep going the way you are. You can keep pushing Derek, keep manipulating him, keep treating him like a tool. And I'll go to the police. I'll file the report. And your career will be over. No one will hire a real estate agent with a criminal record. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't do that. I would, I said. In a heartbeat. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She knew I was serious. She'd seen me in action, seen me fight for the things I loved. And she knew, maybe for the first time, that she'd misjudged me. Or, I continued, you can let him go. You can tell him the truth. You can tell him you've been using him, and you can apologize. And then you can give him the space he needs to figure out who he is without you. And what happens to me? She asked, her voice Relia whispered. You get to keep your job. You get to walk away. And you get to live with the knowledge that you almost destroyed a good man. That's your punishment. She sat there for a long time, her face unreadable. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, she said. I'll do it. I'll tell him the truth. I didn't believe her. Not for a second. But I didn't need to. I'd planted the seed. I'd given her the choice. What she did next was on her. Good, I said. Now get out of my room. I've had enough of you for one day. She stood up, her heels clicking on the linoleum. She paused at the door, looking back at me. Frank, I'm sorry. I really am. Sorry doesn't fix anything, I said. Action does. Now go. She left. I sat there in the silence, watching the door swing shut. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Tired of fighting, tired of worrying, tired of being the one who had to carry the burden. But I'd done what I needed to do. I'd stood up for myself. I'd stood up for my son. And I'd given Marlene the chance to make things right. If she took it, good. If she didn't, I'd deal with that when the time came. I lay back in bed and closed my eyes. The rain had root again, a soft patter against the window. I let it lull me to sleep, the sound of it washing away the anger and the hurt and the fear. Tomorrow was another day. And I'd face it the same way I'd faced every day for 73 years. One step at a time. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet, maybe. I got out of the hospital and went home, back to my house with the creaky porch and the cracked driveway and the apple tree that still held my secrets. Sal picked me up and drove me there, and we sat on the porch for an hour, just watching the street and saying nothing. That was the thing about old friends. You didn't always need words. Derek called every day. Sometimes twice. He asked about my hip, my appetite, my sleep. He asked if I needed anything from the store, if I wanted company, if I was okay. He was trying, I could tell. He was trying to be the son I'd raised, the one who read about things that couldn't be measured in dollars. But he never mentioned Marlene. And I never asked. I knew she'd done what I'd asked. I knew she'd told him the truth, or at least some version of it. I could see it in the way he talked, the way his voice ride a new weight, a new sadness. He was grieving something. A mirage. A dream. A version of himself he'd let her build. I didn't push. I'd learned that grief needed time, and time was something I had plenty of. Then, one Saturday in late October, he showed up at my door. He was carrying a 6-pack of beer and a fishing rod, the same one he'd used when he was a kid. Thought we could go to the lake, he said. Like we used to. I looked at him. He was wearing an old flannel shirt and worn jeans, his hair a little longer than usual. He looked tired, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Something that looked like peace. Give me a minute to grab my jacket, I said. We drove to the lake in his car, a beat-up sedan he'd bought after selling the BMW. It wasn't much to look at, but it ran, and that was all that mattered. The lake was 40 minutes out of town, a small, muddy pond surrounded by cottonwoods and cattails. It wasn't the kind of place you went for trophy fish. It was the kind of place you went to think. We sat on the bank, our lines in the water, the sun on our shoulders. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Derek cleared his throat. Dad, I need to tell you something. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the bobber. I'm listening. Marlene's gone. She moved out. She's living with her sister in another state. I didn't react. I'd expected it, in some way. Marlene was the kind of woman who cut her losses and ran. But it still hurt to hear it, because I knew it hurt him. I'm sorry, son, I said. I know you loved her. I did, he said. But I don't think she ever loved me. Not really. She loved what I could give her. She loved the idea of me. But when things got hard, she left. He paused, reeling in his line and casting it out again. His hands were steady. His voice was steady. He was holding it together better than I'd expected. After you talked to her, she came home and told me everything. She told me she'd been manipulating me. She told me she'd only married me because she thought I'd be successful. She told me she'd been lying about the debt. We weren't as far in debt as I thought. She'd been hiding money, saving it for herself. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Saving it, yeah. She had a separate account. $20,000 RS. She'd been siphoning it off from our joint account for RS, small amounts so I wouldn't notice. She was planning to leave me all along. She just wanted to take as much as she could first. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. The funny thing is, I didn't even read about the money. I read about the lie. I read about all the years I spent thinking I was a failure, when really I was just being used. I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. Derek, I'm sorry. I know how that feels. Your mother did the same thing to me. Not with money, but with lies. She convinced me I was the problem. That I was too old, too boring, too poor. And I believed her. I believed her for a long time. He looked at me, his eyes wet. How did you get through it? I didn't get through it, I said. I just survived it. I woke up every morning and I put one foot in front of the other. I raised you. I worked my job. I found things to be grateful for. And eventually, I realized that I was worth more than she'd made me feel. You're worth more than Marlene made you feel, too. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm trying to believe that. It's hard. It's always hard, I said. But it gets easier. I promise. We fished for another hour, catching nothing. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that we were together, father and son, doing what we'd always done. Talking. Listening. Being hot on the drive home, Derek told me he was thinking about going back to school. He wanted to become a teacher, maybe. Work with kids who had troubled homes, like he'd had. I think I could make a difference, he said. I think I could help kids who feel like they're not enough, like I felt. I looked at him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He looked like a man who'd found a new purpose. I think you could do that, I said. I think you'd be great at it. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in months. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. That night, I went to my safe and opened it. I took out the envelope with the $40,000 RS and counted it. It was all there, every bill. I thought about what Derek had told me, about his plans to become a teacher. I thought about the list of charities he'd shown me, the ones he'd pledged to donate to. I thought about the man he was becoming, the man he'd always had the potential to be. I made a decision. The next morning, I called him and asked him to come over. He showed up an hour later, looking nervous. Dad, what's going on? You sounded serious on the phone. Sit down, son. I have something to tell you. He sat on the couch, his hands clasped between his knees. I sat across from him, in my recliner, and I looked him in the eye. I'm proud of you, I said. I know I haven't said that as much as I should. But I'm proud of the man you're becoming. You made a mistake, but you owned it. You changed. You grew. That's all I ever wanted. He root to speak, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. I'm not going to give you the $40,000 RS. Not all of it, anyway. That money is my safety net, and I need it. But I am going to give you $10,000. As a loan. Interest-free. You can use it to pay for your classes, or your books, or whatever you need to get root. And when you're on your feet, you can pay me back. A little at a time. No pressure. He read at me, his mouth open. Dad, I can't take your money. Not after what I did. You're not taking it, I said. I'm giving it. Because I believe in you. And I believe you'll use it wisely. He stood up and walked over to me, wrapping his arms around me. He was crying, but they were good TRS. The kind that washed away the old and made room for the new. Thank you, Dad, he whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, I said. I could never give up on you. The months passed. Derek enrolled in a teacher certification program at the community college. He root working part time at a youth center, tutoring kids who were struggling with reading and math. He told me stories about them, about their problems and their triumphs. He was happy. I could see it in his eyes, the way he talked, the way he ride himself. He was finally becoming the man he was meant to be. I root volunteering at the senior center, playing cards with other old-timers and telling stories about my bus driving days. I even rude writing down my memories, not for anyone else, just for me. It felt good to put them on paper, to know that they wouldn't be forgotten, and every Saturday, Derek and I went to the lake. We fished. We talked. We sat in comfortable silence. And I watched him grow, day by day, into the man I'd always known he could be. The apple tree in my backyard blossomed in the spring. I stood under it one morning, looking up at the white flowers, and I thought about my father. He'd planted that tree when I was a boy, and he'd told me that good things take time. It had taken years for that tree to bear fruit, but when it did, it was the best fruit in the county. The same was true of people. You couldn't rush growth. You couldn't force change. You just had to plant the seed and wait. And I'd planted that seed in Derek, years ago. It had taken a long time to sprout. But it had. And I was grateful that the money I'd given him, he paid it back. Every penny. It took 3 years, but he did it. He became a teacher, got a job at a middle school, and was making a real difference in kids' lives. He found someone new, too. A woman named Tama, a librarian with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. She was everything Raylene wasn't. She was patient. She was honest. And she loved Derek for who he was, not for what he could give her. I met her at a barbecue in my backyard, the first one I'd hosted in years. Sal was there, and Gladys, and a few of my old bus driving buddies. We grilled burgers and drank beer and laughed until our sides hurt. And I watched my son laugh with his new love, and I thought, this is what it's all about. Not money. Not stuff. This. After the barbecue, when everyone had gone home, I sat on my porch swing and watched the stars come out. The apple tree rustled in the breeze, and I could hear Derek and Tama laughing inside the house, cleaning up the kitchen. I smiled. A real smile. The kind that came from somewhere deep and true. I'd faced my own mortality. I'd faced betrayal. I'd faced the horridest truth a father can face, that his own child might not be the person he thought. But I'd survived. And better than that, I'd helped my son survive, too. The 40,000 was still in the safe. I'd added to it over the years, little bits here and there. It was enough. More than enough. I was thinking of donating some to the youth center where Derek had volunteered. That would be a good legacy. A way to make sure the lessons I'd learned didn't die with me. But that was for another day. Tonight, I just sat on my porch, listening to the night sounds, and let myself be happy. I was 78 years old. My hip was a little creaky. My knees hurt when it rained. But I was alive. I was loved. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that I'd done something right that was worth more than any card, any pin, any bank account. That was worth everything. The summer heat settled over the county like a wet blanket, the kind of sticky, oppressive weather that made you appreciate air conditioning and cold lemonade. I was sitting on my porch, fanning myself with an old newspaper, when Derek's car pulled into the driveway. He was alone, which wasn't unusual these days. Tama was at a library conference in the city, and Derek had taken the week off from teaching to do some work around my house. He stepped out of the car, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Dad, you look like you're melting." "I am melting," I said. "But I'm melting in my own yard, so it's fine." He laughed and walked up the steps, handing me a cold bottle of water. "I brought you something. Thought you might want it." I took the water and drank half of it in one gulp. "Thanks, son." "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just wanted to see you." He sat down on the porch swing, the chains creaking under his weight. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything that happened. About what I did." I looked at him. He was 30 now, a full-grown man with a steady job and a steady relationship and a future that looked brighter than it had in years. But there was still something in his eyes, a shadow of the guilt he carried. "You can't keep carrying that around," I said. "It's been years. You've paid your debt. You've changed. I know, he said. But I still think about it. About how close I came to losing everything. About how I almost lost you. You didn't lose me, I said. I'm right here. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. I knew that look. It was the same look I'd worn for years after my ex-wife left. The look of a man who couldn't quite forgive himself. Derek, listen to me, I said. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life rehashing what happened. I've forgiven you. You need to forgive yourself. He looked at me, his eyes glistening. I'm trying. It's just our road. I know. But you've got to let it go. You've got a good life now. A good woman. A good job. Don't let the past ruin it. He took a deep breath and nodded. You're right. You're always right. Not always, I said. But I'm right about this. We sat in silence for a while, watching the neighbors walk their dogs and the kids ride their bikes. It was a peaceful scene, the kind of ordinary summer day that seemed simple but held all the complexity of life. Then Derek said, Dad, I've got something to tell you. I raised an eyebrow. Another surprise. You already gave me the water. He laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. No, it's bigger than that. Tama and I, we're getting married. Next spring. In a garden. Simple and small. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. That's wonderful, son. I'm really happy for you. Thanks, Dad. And I was hoping you'd walk me down the aisle. Not that I'm getting married to a woman, I mean, I am, but Tamara's parents are older and they can't travel, and I just thought it would be nice if you were there with me. To give me away, I guess. Or to stand with me. Whatever the right word is. I looked at him, this man who had been a boy, who had been lost and found and lost again. He was asking me to be part of his new beginning. To stand beside him as he wrote the next chapter of his life. I'd be honored, I said. I'd be more than honored. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that lit up his whole face. Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know. The next few months were a blur of wedding planning. Tama was organized and efficient, the kind of woman who made lists and checked them twice. She involved me in the decisions, asking my opinion on the flowers and the food and the music. I told her I didn't care about any of that, but she insisted. You're part of this family now, she said. Your opinion matters. I liked her. I liked her a lot. She was patient with Derek, kind to me, and she had a way of making everyone around her feel important. She was everything Rolene hadn't been, and I was grateful that the wedding was in May, in a garden at the city park. The roses were in bloom, red and pink and white, and the air smelled like honeysuckle. Derek wore a gray suit that fit him perfectly, and Tama wore a simple white dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of a dream. Sal was there, and Gladys, and a few of my old bus-driving buddies. It wasn't a big crowd, but it was filled with people who loved them. When the music root, Derek looked at me. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. Ready? I asked. He nodded. Ready. We walked down the aisle together, father and son, step by step. The guests watched, some smiling, some crying. I felt a lump in my throat, but I held it together. This was a happy day. A day for joy, not for sorrow. We reached the altar, and I handed Derek over to the officiant. I sat down in the front row, next to Sal, who elbowed me in the ribs. You crying? He whispered. No, I said, wiping my eye. It's allergies. He snorted, but he didn't argue. The ceremony was short and sweet. Tamara's brother played guitar, and they'd written their own vows. Derek promised to be patient and kind. Tama promised to be honest and loyal. They were good vows, the kind that came from the heart. At the reception, I gave a toast. I stood up at the head table, my glass raised, and looked out at the faces of the people who mattered. When Derek was born, I said, I held him in my arms and I thought, this is the best day of my life. And it was. But there were other good days, too. The day he took his first steps. The day he caught his first fish. The day he graduated high school. And today. Today, I get to watch him start a new chapter, a beautiful chapter, with a woman who loves him for who he is. I paused, my voice catching. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of. But loving Derek has never been a mistake. He's the best thing I ever did. And I'm so proud of the man he's become. Derek stood up and hugged me, his arms tight around my shoulders. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. The reception went on late into the night. I danced with Tama R.A., who was graceful and light on her feet, and with Gladys, who stepped on my toes but made up for it with a big laugh. I sat with Sal and told stories about the old days, about the bus route and the people I'd met and the lessons I'd learned. At the end of the night, when the last guests had left and the lights were being dimmed, Derek found me on the porch of the reception hall. Dad, can I tell you something? Anything, son? I want to start a fund. In your name. For the bus driver's pension. I've been saving up, and I want to put some money aside so that when people retire, they have a little extra. Like you did. I read at him. Derek, that's a beautiful thing. But you don't have to do that. You have your own family to think about now. I know, he said. But I want to. It's the least I can do. You taught me so much, Dad. About work, about honesty, about being a man. I want to honor that. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You already honor me, son. Every day. Just by being who you were. He smiled, and we stood there in the dark, listening to the night sounds. Crickets and frogs and the distant hum of traffic. It was a perfect moment, the kind that you want to hold on to forever. When I went home that night, I opened the safe and looked at the envelope. The $40,000 was still there, untouched. I thought about Derek's fund, about the bus drivers who'd worked just as hard as I had and retired with nothing. I thought about my father, hammering nails into the garage wall, teaching me that a man's hands were his bank account. I made a decision. The next day, I went to the credit union and opened a second account. I put $5,000 in it, EARMA for the bus driver's pension fund. And I put the rest back in the safe, to use as I needed. The next Saturday, Derek and I went fishing. The lake was calm, the water reflecting the blue sky like a mirror. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. We sat side by side, our lines in the water, and let the peace wash over us. Dad, Derek said, thank you. For everything. Thank you, son, I said. For coming back. He smiled, and I smiled, and we sat there until the sun went down, the same way we'd done when he was a boy. The same way we'd always do. The years passed. Derek and Tama R.A. had a daughter, a little girl with her mother's eyes and her father's laugh. I became a grandfather, and I loved it. I taught her to fish, just like I taught Derek. I told her stories about the bus route and the people I'd met. She called me Grandpa Frank, and I answered to it gladly. And every year, on the anniversary of the day Derek and I had sat on the hospital bench and made things right, we went to the lake. We fished and talked and remembered. It was our tradition, our way of honoring the past and celebrating the future. I'm 91 now. My hip hurts, and my knees are re-shot, and I can't see as well as I used to. But I'm happy. I have a family that loves me. I have friends who remember me. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that I did something right. The $40,000 is gone now. Most of it went to the bus driver's pension fund, a gift from me and Derek. The rest went to Tamara's library, to buy books for kids who couldn't afford them. It's a better legacy than a bank balance. A better way to be remembered. I sit on my porch now, watching the apple tree blossom. It's spring again, and the flowers are white and perfect. My granddaughter is playing in the yard, her laughter ringing out like a bell. Derek and Tama are inside, making dinner. Sal is gone now, passed away 3 years ago, but I still feel him with me, his laugh echoing in my memory. I'm a lucky man. I've had my share of right break, my share of disappointment. But I've also had my share of joy. And at the end of it all, that's what matters. I close my eyes and smile. The same smile I had in the hospital bed, all those years ago. But this time, it's not a secret smile. It's a smile of peace. A smile of gratitude. A smile that says, I lived. I loved. And I made it count. That's all any of us can ask for.